Okay, I'm going to call the October 30th, 2024 meeting of the Local Comprehensive Planning Committee to order. And I will call a roll. Wendy Northcross is not with us tonight. Cheryl Powell.
Here.
Mark Hanson.
Here.
Amanda Converse. Susan Roback. Megan Mort. Alicia Chase. Asa Graves. Fran Parks. Katia DeCuna.
Here.
Lindsay Council is here. Jennifer Williams. Bob Twist.
Here.
And Avery Revere.
Here.
All right. Thank you very much. Next is the notice of recording. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the committee must inquire whether anyone is taping this meeting and to please make their presence known. Seeing no one, we'll move on. We have no minutes to approve at this meeting, so we'll go directly to public comment. Anybody wishing to speak to the group, please come on down and get your comments in. You going to speak, Mark?
I hope so.
Okay, just give us your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
And to sign in. He needs to sign in.
Yeah, you'll have to sign
Mark
in.
Wharton, West Barnstable.
Sign in as well.
I don't have just 3 minutes, so I'll take my time signing in.
Make up for it.
I'm commenting on the broad brush that was used to paint that circle on your map over at the college. That big broad brush included a lot of land west of Route 132, which is the YMCA, the Burger King, the Park and Ride, and a lot of other things that are useful, and I don't know why we need to get involved in all that. It also includes part of the state highway, so I had a great conversation with a member of your committee about it, and I just want to express, I had sent some information in about my questioning why the town had to get involved in all of this stuff over there. So also there's a nice long strip down Route 132 where somebody decided to try and get the town involved. 132 is perfect the way it is. We've got golf courses, we've got land bank land on both sides of 132. It's a great entrance to the town of Barnstable and the great village of Hyannis. We don't need to do anything more. Just leave it the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else here to wish to speak to the committee? Seeing none, we'll move to the topics for discussion. I believe we have Jim Kupfer to speak to that.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. Jim Kupfer, Director of Planning. Tonight we'll be going over our land use map and the comments that we have received to date. Just as a reminder, at our last meeting, we started to go over the draft map utilizing the baseline future land use map from 2010 and expanding upon that, outlining a few initiatives that were suggested through public comment, and then putting it out, and also the comments of the committee. And then at that point, putting it out for public comment to our community. And we received a lot of great feedback. So I'll go over that this evening. Just quickly, a review. I'll go over the review of the map and public comments, and then I'll hand it off to Kate, who will wrap up with our future schedule. So as I always do in each meeting, I like to look back to where we've been to how we got here this evening. We started, of course, with our existing conditions report, looking at all the subject matter areas and what our conditions are now here in our community. That produced phase one, which is mostly the existing conditions and engagement, and also has a fairly refined vision statement. That vision statement was produced through a little over a year and a half of outreach to our community, that outlined this vision statement that kind of highlights a lot of our points. And it's actually, if you look at a lot of these public comments for the map, a lot of them touch right back to our vision. So to me, it sounds like, the committee has really started to hear our community, and that vision is really is kind of hitting the mark, which is good to see. Beyond the existing conditions of the vision statement, we've begun our second half of the local comprehensive plan, which are the subject matter chapters: land use, housing, natural resources, infrastructure, facilities, economic development, cultural heritage, and design. We developed out these chapters through not only looking back at our existing conditions report, our public comment, but also hearing expert presentations on each of the subject matters. Those chapters have been drafted and are to, again, with those chapters, with the vision statement, with the existing conditions report, help facilitate an update to our future land use map, and ultimately, hopefully soon here, an action plan. So our map itself. The map, as of our last meeting, had a number of different areas. So we had our residential and rural areas. So that is all the yellow. That's much of our community is the residential and rural area. That is existing residential zoning districts. And much of it is the resource protection overlay district. So the left half, for the most part, of our community is a resource protection overlay district, 2-acre zoning. That's the hash that you see throughout the left side of our community. We also have the Regional Economic Center, which is the hashed area kind of near where the mall is, and the surrounding area of that. We have our downtown Hyannis growth incentive zone, which is the purple area right in downtown. We also have reworded our village centers to specifically call out the preservation aspects and actions to call them historic village centers, and those are kind of the orange circled bubble areas that you'll see. We also identified some small commercial, or no, I shouldn't say small, but commercial nodes in the light purple, and light commercial, which is essentially the West Main Street corridor there. And again, that light commercial is refined from what was previously commercial corridor. So talking about, our last conversation was talking about refining those uses to make it maybe more palatable for that area, potentially a mixture of uses, but kind of light in their impacts, perhaps. We do identify in that blue cross that community college area, and I noted, the public comment certainly noted. We actually talk about it a little bit further here in the presentation, and we could certainly refine those boundaries if the committee so chose. That is one of our few study areas that the committee is looking to highlight here. Not only the community college area, but Independence Village is something that has been repetitive throughout this process. The Independence Village Area Master Plan is now identified on this map as something that we really should be taking a hard look at in our next 5-10 year outlook. We also added a West End neighborhood area master plan. So this is generally the high school area and the close surrounding neighborhoods of the high school, to think about ways in which we could, again, maybe improve the use categories in that area to assist in the needs of that location. And then we identify, lastly, the Route 132 corridor study area. And that is the rationale behind that was the fact that we, as a committee, as a town, we're looking at potentially studying the community college area as well as the Independence Park area. And with both of those, if changes are made, likely impacts would be created to 132. And I think that was the rationale behind that. And obviously, in the last item on this, I already touched on the Resource Protection Overlay District, which is that left half, that rural 2 acres zoning. So what did we hear? Well, we had a lot of great comments. This is our interactive mapping tool that we have online at barnstablelcp.com. We got a lot of great feedback online and via email. We got 55 comments submitted online via the interactive map and 25 individual emails submitted to the committee. You have all of those in print form, and we're emailed to you for all of the suggested comments. And what we've done is try and boil those down for discussion purposes tonight, but obviously you guys have them in full, and they're posted online on barnstablelcp.com. So again, this is the map that we were working off of, and we've begun to take those specific areas that I just ran down that left side, the residential, rural, regional economics, and we started to identify those comments that we heard from our community during this past month. Obviously these aren't the only comments. I mean, this is building off of this 1.5 to 2 year process, but these are the comments that we heard from our community on this, specifically on the future land use map. So in the residential and rural area, I should state that I will go over these comments, and then maybe at the end, if there's any reactions from the committee or if there's any changes the committee chooses to make this evening, we certainly can make those, tweak the map, and move forward with that map this evening. Or certainly, given that there is kind of a lighter crowd this evening of the committee, perhaps we take this under advisement and seek some further feedback from the committee, however the chair wishes to proceed. So I'll go over the comments, and then we could potentially just open it up for discussion. So again, in the residential and rural area, what we heard time and time again was, the protection of our historic planning and development pattern. And that's really what we've been talking about from the start. I mean, we have a somewhat fairly sophisticated planning strategy for our community. We have a growth incentive zone that highlights redevelopment of underutilized properties. We have a regional commercial center, which is kind of the commercial center of the Cape for the most part. And then we have kind of our rural community, our single family community. And what we've heard by and large is trying to protect those single family zoning districts, that are outside in that residential and rural area, that yellow area. There were a number of comments, so we wanted to highlight it, though it may not be a map change, but coordinating regulations for short-term rentals was something that was repetitive in the comments, so we wanted to make sure we highlighted that there. In the Regional Economic Center, explore opportunities for additional commercial and recreational areas due to the influx of nearby housing developments. So again, that really, to me, touches back to specifically the Independence Park area and talking about, there has been a lot of new housing development in that general area. So how do we explore opportunities for that balance of uses? And so while we're talking about the Regional Economic Center, that's just a stone's throw away. So we just being mindful of that, but also within the Regional Economic Center there, I'm sure there's opportunities there as well. Comments for revisiting the downtown high-end zoning. That's somewhat of an ongoing process now, but certainly, somewhat of a repetitive comment that I wanted to highlight there. Strong opinions on preserving our village centers. We have, what I always like to call quintessential New England village centers. So highlighting the opportunity to preserve those in some manner, and that could be, the map itself already kind of identifies that, but this furthers that. And then we certainly think about action strategies to do that in a more formal manner, as we kind of discussed a little bit at the last meeting. I was hoping Fran would here so she could help me with this next bullet. This talks about the expanding Cotuit's Village Center. So the little guy in Cotuit, the little circle, is the village center that we identified. Sure, it could be expanded if we thought that was appropriate, showing on the map a larger village center in Cotuit. So we could certainly have more dialogue on that. This proposes a very sizable village center that, I think when we go back out to Katuitt, we will want to have a conversation about where they identify their main village center. In the light commercial section, consider adding light commercial near the park and ride. So we identify light commercial on West Main Street, again, kind of changing it from what it was previously from a just general commercial, which is somewhat more, in my opinion, a little heavier commercial, to a lighter use commercial. There were a few comments regarding doing similar aspects to 132. So right now we had just identified as a study area, and no specific changes such as that, but there was some suggestions for that. In the light commercial, talking about enhancing vegetation buffers and tree canopy, that could be a really good action strategy, I would say. But it's great to see that specifically in the light commercial, so we don't lose focus that, we're not just talking uses itself, but other design elements that we should maybe be considering when we're talking about these types of things. And so all these we could be mindful of as we're starting to develop out an action plan. And review acceptable uses for the area across from the high school down to the Rotary. So again, in the map, we have a west end area master plan, but as you see, it kind of overlaps with the corridor. So again, looking at maybe more acceptable uses in that general area that will not have as much impact and maybe serve a need. So other areas, so the community college master plan area. So again, the dialogue has been to date that, obviously the community college is looking at their general area, but the committee has discussed ways in which they could at least be a partner or a seat at the table in those discussions and look at the general area to serve needs of not just the college, but others. And then this is a great comment that I believe our public comment started out with. Should we be refining that study area? It highlights the conservatory, the Burger King area, the park and ride, the YMCA. I think the thought process behind that, honestly, was how they all play together. Not necessarily changing any of those uses, but how do they all interact together, and if there is anything that could enhance that general area right off of the park and ride, right off where the buses go. At least that's what the conversation in the past has been, but certainly can refine that district if the committee so chose. And then coordinate study for future impacts of development on downgrading property. So again, making that note that, in any study area, much like what the committee has already done in terms of the community college and the Independence Park, and noting that, hey, there's going to be clearly impacts on 132 if you were to make any wholesale changes to either district. We also need to be considerate of, the down gradient areas as well, specifically for this one, the community college area going down towards Oak Street and 6A. Independence Village area master plan, explore opportunities for housing was noted several times, but also, which is what I would expect, considering the conversation that we've heard to date, explore opportunities for housing as well as small bays, warehouses, vehicle parking for contractors and small businesses. So we had comments for all of the above, and that's what we've been hearing is, how do we make these uses kind of work in harmony? So that's something that, I think has been just such a repetitive theme throughout this planning process, and we'll have to dive in much deeper with this specific area master plan. Just a few more here. In the West End neighborhood area master plan, we received comments on expanding that boundary. So let's see, do I have the map? No. map there. We kind of, I believe that line goes to Lincoln. Yeah, Lincoln Road right now. There was comments of expanding it east to capture more of the general area, almost to the growth incentive zone or the West End Rotary, essentially. That's certainly the committee could discuss. Right now, it's more refined to the general area of the high school and its immediate surrounding area for opportunities to maybe improve like workforce housing and stuff like those types of uses that are maybe lower impact. Route 132 corridor study area. So again, we actually did receive a number of comments on, again, talking about contractors' bays, not just in Independence Park, but some comments on the 132 area might be an appropriate location for those. Explore opportunities for high efficiency, affordable housing located nearby exits to mitigate future traffic issues was also noted. And then one thing that we thought was important, very specific, but we thought was important, we identify maritime areas. We only identified really the harbor, so the Barnstable Harbor, Hyannis, and two others where I think here we're talking about getting more into the weeds on more ways to water almost. So we certainly can. I believe there's just under 90 ways to water though. So I'm not trying to muddy up the future land use map. I think we do identify it either in the existing conditions or in our natural resources chapter, the ways to water there. So beyond the specific public comments for the map itself, we wanted to make sure that other comments did not go unnoticed. Again, you guys have all the specific ones, but I just wanted to highlight a handful of actions that maybe the committee, as we're developing out the action plan, are mindful of, because there are a couple buckets of actions that we heard. And one was protecting water quality, and they came in many different forms. But protecting water quality was a consistent comment. And again, thinking back to our vision statement process, that kept rising to the top in the vision statement. So it's not a surprise that these are, but I think it's good that we continue to hear it, because I think it means that you guys are moving in the right direction and hearing from our community. So protecting water quality, here's some specific actions that were identified, and maybe we could produce something similar in our action plan as we move forward. And I'll just read these quickly. There should be a comprehensive plan for regular maintenance of the Katuitt Channel, the refreshment of the east end of Dead Neck for crude sand at Katuitt. The impacts in Pompanesett Bay and Shoestring Bay. Consider feasibility of restoring a herring run at the Twin Brooks watershed. And then lastly, studying innovative strategies for septic solutions. Not proposed to be improved with sewer through the CWMP. So we have we had a number of actions for protecting water quality. We also had a number of actions that we identified for improving accessibility in many different modes. So bike paths down West Main was something that was identified as an action that they would really like to see. Same thing, shared use paths, West Main, 28. Making that connection with the rail trail, especially through Independence Village, create multi-use paths to connect the villages and all of our conservation areas. So it'd be great if one day we could connect all of our villages through our multi-use paths. Improve ADA accessibility, specifically calling out Main Street, Old Colony, widen sidewalks, Old Colony to Azleton. Lack of sidewalks and bike paths for residents. On again 28, 132, our main corridors there. And lastly, bike path dedicated lane to connect West End and rentals to the beaches, snack bars, et cetera. So we saw a lot of those requests for actions for multimodal transportation is basically what it boils down to. Similarly, again, we heard in all of our visioning, we heard in our early outreach, improvements to traffic. West Main Street, Pitchers Way, Lincoln Road, Craigville Beach, these are all things that I think the committee has heard time and time again, and certainly is something that should be action strategies. And then lastly, the Gateway Airport, strategic analysis of the Gateway Airport, that it was identified a few times that we should be looking more strategically at that and what the future of that may hold. So with that, we wanted to kind of refine the conversation a little bit in terms of potential changes to the map. But before I get there, maybe I'll hand it back to the committee. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I have one quick clarification, if you wouldn't mind, please, Jim. Where you were talking about Lincoln Road, were you talking about the intersection with 120, with 28 or 132?
Right, so as it's defined there, it actually makes that connection. And that's actually I'm sure one of the reasons why it's highlighted on as a traffic concern. It's a straight shot, and there we do have some speeding concerns at that location. But that's what's identified in that west end area as kind of the boundary as of right now. But we'll touch on maybe adjusting that shortly.
Appreciate that.
Anything else from members? I have a comment. I think this yellow map is too complicated. I think the study areas should be called out in a separate map so that folks know that this is, a zoning map, and it explains that. And some of the hash marking is a little bit difficult to understand. I think we could also do with the historic areas. We have several. We have the Old Kings Highway area. We have the downtown Hyannis historic districts. All of this historic stuff could be on one map so that folks understand that there are criteria in those areas that are above and beyond zoning and a lot of that stuff. And then I think then you could lend some of your crosshatching. If an area like the airport is kind of ghosted on this, even though that's a call-out area in two layers, the commercial node section and then the airport itself. So it's getting a little you're trying to do too much on one map, I think. So I would give those, areas another look. Then the one that's in the northwest Osterville area along South County Road there, I don't think we wound up doing anything with that, right? The long piece where the
Right. No, that's back towards the zoning. So yeah, there's nothing really.
There's nothing called out on that.
Nothing called out there. No changes there.
So that's just something to look at. I mean, and it mentions the Hyannis Historic District, but it doesn't. The GIS mapping wipes it out.
Yep.
So those are a couple of my thoughts on that.
Can I add something to that?
Certainly.
Just to add on to that, if that's okay. I agree, it looks very busy and it's very small. I know we have it on the much bigger one as well. I was stating earlier that when trying to go over this at home, I actually went to Home Goods and purchased one of these big magnifying glasses so I can go like this with it. But I would agree, almost like if they were numbered, this thing, but enlarged, made easier, and so that you can put them together, or you can take sections, and color coding some of the various like the historic districts, et cetera, schools and all that. Although those already are to an extent, and also to say a lot of really hard work has gone into this from your department. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, and we can certainly achieve that, making a study area map, a future study area map, a future historic map, and a future zoning map. We could think about how we word that, but we
Right.
could certainly achieve that. Yep.
Anything else from members? Anyone from the public, if you got a comment on this part? Just state your name and log in.
Hi, it's Eric Schwab from Hyannis. How you doing?
Good.
I just wanted to sort of reemphasize the vision of West Main Street that the folks that live there have. we have three important educational institutions. We have Sturgis, we have High West, and the high school. So it's really not necessary to separate the high school. There were three institutions there with a lot of kids. And right now, they're kicking up and down the sidewalk. They don't have a cafeteria at Sturgis. They need to have a place to go after work. And we're not thinking about them. We're not thinking about the next generation who might not want a car. I mean, my nephew's 32 years old. He doesn't own a car. I had one at 16, right? I mean, there are people that don't want cars. We also have the highest density of apartment complexes in West Hyannis. So while, we're spending all these planning resources reimagining downtown and building, apartment housing, we already have apartment housing. What we don't have is the infrastructure for walkability. So, and we've discussed this several times, we need to rethink that whole West Main corridor because it's just stop and go traffic right now. And I don't know how you're going to fix that, but one way to fix it is to transition away from the dependence on automobiles. And you're not going to do that until you put some basic infrastructure in place. And I don't really know what intermodal transportation means. I mean, we would be happy with, decent sidewalks and, bike paths. That would be enough. And we're not, sure, we want the hotels to have access and we want the beaches to be accessible. But what we really want is the flow coming from 28 down to West Main to be really clearly established, so that someone can roll out of their house, a block away from Lincoln and get to school, in 5 to 7 minutes, on a bike or a skateboard or whatever. Until we get people off their cars, off the dependence on cars, we're just not gonna, the area is just going to continue to get dense. And that's what's happening with it. The density in West Hyannis, everything west of the Rotary, is increasing exponentially, with the trucks and the landscapers and, the FedEx service vehicles. There's just a lot of stuff. There's a lot of rolling stock already. So please, when you think about West Hyannis and you think about that little triangle for the high school only, think about that whole area and how to make it more eco-friendly. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Anyone else care to speak? Mark, did you have something?
Yes, if I could follow up on Mr. Schwab's comment there. One of the things to also, I understand what he's saying in the sense of West Main Street is literally just one lane in each direction, and you've got, when you talk about the three schools, so we've got three, and I only know this because I have young children, we've got three different times of school buses. So you've got the ones that come in high school early, then it's the middle school, then it's the littles, and then half of them are out at noon. I mean, that is a real, that alone, trying to find something to tackle that would certainly let up on some of that traffic. And again, the thought that it is a finite amount of road to deal with. So that it's a good point made.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I do agree. And I like, when they said, they mentioned the necessity of to people be less dependent on cars and use more of the bikes and other way to get into. So we don't have the sidewalks, it's not enough, doesn't works, and for bicycles. So it's actually very dangerous. And if you're driving at nighttime, people are biking, coming from work or whatever. So it's we really would like to get in deep and see what better we can do there.
Thank you. Okay.
Excellent. All great comments. Thank you. And so we did want to offer just some suggestions for consideration in terms of the map itself. We're looking at, and exactly what we were talking about here, really expanding upon that triangle, not just the high school area, but expanding all the way to essentially where West Sturgis is, where the West End Rotary is, and making that connection essentially to downtown Hyannis. So if there was, say, bike paths or something to that effect. It would, the study area would consist of the entirety of, say, West Main Street or 28. So that was something to throw out there, and certainly can get the opinions of the committee. This is just through the aerial view. It's a lot of single-family housing, obviously, that you see there. And I think it was the rationale for not including, because likely not a lot of changes to the neighborhood, but really the corridor itself. So maybe if we were to make those changes, maybe it's carving out almost like a C in there, that it's following 28, it's following West Main Street to a certain depth, but not including the neighborhoods within there.
I think that's a good idea. That way folks won't think that there's something coming to their neighborhood that
Right.
we're not intending.
So we can certainly take a stab at that and offer it to the committee.
Bob?
Thank you. I'll have to fess up, this is my suggestion, so I'll defend it. As you point out, Jim, most of the area in there is already single-family housing. It's already fully developed. There's no expectation any of that's going to change where it currently exists. But the point that people have been making, and Mr. Schwab has made tonight, and Councilman Mendez made the last meeting, is that whatever happens on Route 28, whatever happens on West Main, whatever happens on Lincoln, it affects everything in the middle, and everything in the middle affects what's on all those corridors. So my suggestion is to include in that study area, the area you have, the bigger area, going all the way down to the West End Circle and the Melody Tent, which I recall the Melody Tent's already in the GIZ, so we don't have to deal with that. But it has a huge impact during the summer in the evenings. The traffic coming into and out of the Melody Tent completely clogs West Main Street and the feeder streets into West Main Street. And, we probably should be looking if there's, it's been that way for 50 years. Maybe more, Maybe as we look at it, we should be thinking, well, is there something we could do to mitigate that? So we need to really have it in our study area. And likewise, we talk about the infrastructure along the West Main corridor. That's going to affect the neighborhoods, both north and south to a certain extent, and the cross-traffic back and forth. So even though we don't anticipate any new development or any changes in the vast bulk of that geographical area, everything in there is impacted. And if we ignore what's going to be impacted and focus only on the corridors, we potentially run ourselves into trouble.
There you are. Any other comments from members on that? All right.
So the community college area, similarly, looking at adjusting boundaries. Again, it's still included at this time, unless the committee wants to, adjust accordingly. The park and ride area, the on-ramp, off-ramps, just as Mr. Twist mentioned, just looking at the general vicinity to understand what amenities are there, what uses are there, and what could be impacted if something was to change in this general area. So including it in the study area, that being the blue area, not the purple, but the blue area. That was the thought there. Just it's slight changes. We don't have the before, but let's see if I go back to the map. There we go. It's kind of tough to see there, but just slight changes to that. But nevertheless, if there's anything we want to maybe pull in this general area, we certainly can. Again, we can offer that to the committee and seek feedback.
Again, this is when you start drawing lines. I think as general as possible is better, so you can include something that may be realized even during the study that's important. So when you start trying to do boundaries, is when you get in. The real intent is to study the area.
Yep. And
So that's why I think calling it out on the study map, it's really an area map, not this property versus that one. Because as Bob mentioned, as you get into it, you may find out other things.
So to that point, perhaps for specifically West Main and for the community college. We could even do for 132 and Independence Village. For the study area map, if we're going to take those out, do we want to be more general in its designation, such as how we have the kind of the circles around the village centers? They're not identifying specific parcels, but they're identifying the general vicinity in which these are the village centers. Perhaps the committee would like to see that on the study area map?
I think
or-
that's a better way to do it.
Yeah.
It's just a generalized approach to study these areas, see the pros, find the cons, and keep it flexible enough where, when things come up, you'll be able to change, rather than, that's not in the hashed out area,
Yeah. Okay.
Mark?
To add to that, I think I'd like to see these particular areas, especially out by the college, encompass as broad an area as possible that doesn't infringe greatly upon current residential. There's so many exciting things that are happening right now with building technologies and IA technologies as far as septic and things that could both protect and contribute. And I think those things are emerging very quickly. And I think half of them are things we don't even realize. And probably to Lindsay's point that we need to be open to the idea of what could be in these areas. And then at that point, maybe dictate a little bit more about what strategic partnerships we might be seeking with, public and private entities that, encompass these sort of IA or like in Boston right now, you see these giant new buildings, but these building companies are partnering with MIT. These buildings are almost net neutral. It's unbelievable. And so this is the thing that I think we need to look at especially for these areas around the college.
And with that, so I just offer out those. So those are the comments that have been received. Those are the action suggestions. Those are some of the map changes that we would like to offer the committee. And so we certainly can produce and provide to the committee these 3 broken out maps and generalized study areas. But is there any other suggested changes to the future land use map that the committee would like to see before we end this discussion?
No, I don't see anyone else? No, I think we're good.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much. And so we will produce that updated maps and provide it to the committee for any further comments, and then ultimately, provide those online at barnstablelcp.com. And I will hand it off to Kate for next step.
Did you want to discuss the comment period for members at this time? You were thinking perhaps leaving it open?
Yeah, I would say at least to the next meeting, we leave that comment period open, and if there are any significant comments that the committee would like to offer, provide it at that next meeting. You could provide it in advance to us so we could provide the materials for you. But if there, it certainly would be prudent for the committee members to, bring it up at the next meeting for public discussion, certainly.
Given it's going to be 6 weeks since we have our next meeting, you think there's any advantage to opening it to the public for further comment?
Certainly, if the committee thinks that it would be advantage, I mean, we can always offer it at barnstablelcp.com, posting it and offering on a comment tool. That's not a heavy lift for us by any means.
Might as well. I mean, we did set a deadline, but now our meeting schedule has changed yet again. It's just going to be time, and people will be getting together for the holidays. Maybe they want to weigh in. I mean, more public comment, the better.
I put a deadline though before the 6 weeks, just simply because of the holidays, people tend to.
I'm intrigued by what can come out of Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Kate Maldonado, Senior Planner. So thank you for all your comments and walking through the land use map. Before we conclude, we just wanted to talk through schedule. We've talked about the next meeting. So as defined in an email that was recently sent out, the committee will not be meeting during the month of November. Town Council was looking for another meeting date, and the date that we had selected worked with there with council, and it's hard to find another date during November. So we will not be meeting during the month of November. I will be canceling that meeting invite tomorrow. I wanted to get through tonight's meeting so that there was no conflict with seeing a cancellation come through your mailbox. So that meeting will be canceled. The next meeting will be held in December. Of note, right now on your calendars, you have December, I believe, 12th booked, but council is seeking that evening. So we're swapping with council, and we will be meeting on December 19th. I'm going to send this in email too, so I'll send out all these dates in your email, and then you'll see some calendar invites coming through, some canceled and some new. But again, you don't have to take detailed notes because I'll send this in your email as well. So moving forward, as mentioned, the next meeting will be in December. It'll be Thursday, December 19th. The objective of that meeting, so it sounds like we'll pick up where we are tonight with any final comments that we have from the committee as well as the public. We'll make sure that we have those 3 map iterations ready for your review in December for further discussion. And then we'd also love to start reviewing the draft action plan as well. So we'll work through each chapter, looking at the strategies that you've discussed and actions that apply to each of those strategies. So we're targeting starting that in December. We've blocked out at least 2 meetings for that action plan with a placeholder. So I apologize, December, it'll just be 1 meeting, and then starting in January, if the committee concurs, we'd like to pick back up with the 2 meetings a month so we can proceed through this effort. So the action plan would be December and into January. The second meeting in January, leaving that as a placeholder because the action plan would likely take more than 2 meetings, especially since we're continuing the future land use map into December. And then February, so this, I've got 2 phases with the schedule. This is what we're working through to produce a draft plan. So that's, obviously we have our existing conditions plan has already been reviewed by the committee with public comment. So building off that, all of the chapters, we're working on fact sheets, pulling out highlight data points for each of the chapters, the goals, the strategies. All of it would be ready for the committee as well as public review. We're targeting February. And so we'll be working, that's going to be subject to working through the action plan, but we wanted to start to announce that sooner than later so that the public is aware that at this time, assuming everything moves as defined on the schedule, we'd be seeking to have that draft plan so everyone could flip through all of the information. It'd go out for public comment, the whole local comprehensive plan. We'd be going out to the villages. We've heard a lot of comments about an open mic night, so we'd be coordinating all sorts of public outreach in February, again, assuming that everything goes well with proceeding through the action plan. Then after we have that hopefully month of February set aside for public comment on that draft local comprehensive plan, next steps, March, we'd like to set aside the month of March for staff to take all of those important comments from the public as well as the committee and work on capturing all of those comments. Maybe we'd squeeze in a meeting, but we'd like to dedicate time for us to make sure we capture all that important public comment. And then after we have all that comment, then we'd be working with the committee, going through chapter by chapter, looking at all those proposed edits from the public as well as the committee, and reviewing and voting on each chapter. So we have that targeted of starting in April. Similar to the action plan, I have proposed 2 meetings for this process, but likely that placeholder meeting in May, we'd be continuing to finish up that effort because it certainly is a lot of information in each chapter, but we'll make it sure that the review is efficient as possible. So then this leads us to, right now, if everything proceeds accordingly, the committee would have gone through each chapter, reviewed, gone through all the comments, voted to accept that chapter as the final draft, and then ultimately working towards providing a submission to town council and that right now is targeted for end of May. So we just wanted to give you a synopsis. I know that this has been an incredible process, almost 2 years behind us to get where we are today, but it's been so important to make sure that we worked through getting all the important data, all the visioning, working through these chapters, but I wanted you to see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And as far as, we really appreciate you're all volunteers giving your own time, looking towards the future of when this would actually be a tangible product, hopefully in February, as long as we can get through the action plan, et cetera. And then when we'd be looking to actually have the committee have reviewed and approved the plan and bringing it to town council in May. So we'll keep this schedule updated. I like to include this in each of the meetings, so we'll keep it updated as we're working through and if anything shifts, so that way you have an idea of next steps, and then certainly availability. We'd like to keep the 2 meetings a month back in place starting in January, that 2nd and 4th Thursday.
Everyone all set with that? What is our obligation with the planning board? Do we have to return to them, or what's the?
Yeah, so we will talk in a time to meet with the planning board to walk through the local comprehensive plan. I know that Jim attends those meetings and provides updates to the planning board at their meetings to let them know where the local comprehensive plan is. And then Jim or myself, the beginning of the month, with the town manager's communications, we also report out where the local comprehensive plan is to make sure that people are informed. But planning board is certainly an important step to present the plan as well, likely in that February time period when we have that solid draft.
Okay, any questions? Seeing none, we can move on from there.
Actually, can I just make a comment?
Certainly.
I actually like very much that we now have a tangible plan that it helps to know rather than just going on and on. This way we have a pretty good idea what the goalposts are. Thank you for putting that together.
Certainly.
Any other comments for staff? Seeing none, we received no general correspondence other than the noted comments, correct? We have no matters not reasonably anticipated. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
No discussion. I'll call the roll. Cheryl Powell,
Aye.
Mark Hanson,
In favor.
Katia DeCuna,
Aye.
Bob Twist,
Aye.
Avery Revere,
Aye.
and Lindsay Council votes aye. Thank you very much.